Hi folks, this is Hector Garcia. I'm a CPA and an advanced QuickBooks Pro advisor. In our firm, we sell, implement, and train small businesses on QuickBooks. So in this video, I'm going to show you or talk to you about which version of QuickBooks could potentially be best for your business. Now, it's important to understand that there are essentially two platforms in the QuickBooks world. We have the QuickBooks Online platform, which is 100% web-based, which means you use a web browser to access it, and it looks like this. And then there's the desktop platform, which means you have to physically install it in a computer, specifically a Windows PC. Even though there's a Mac version, I'm going to completely ignore the Mac version because it's really worth talking about either the PC version or the online versions. Now, the PC version looks like this. Now, in the QuickBooks Online world, it's also important to know how many users are going to be accessing your accounting system. The two simplest versions of QuickBooks Online, which are QuickBooks Online Self-Employed and QuickBooks Online Simple Start, they only allow one user to access it at the time, plus an external accountant. If you move to QuickBooks Essentials, you can have up to 3 users access it at the same time. And the next version is QuickBooks Online Plus, which allows you to have up to 5 users at the same time. You have to move up all the way to the highest version of QuickBooks Online, which is QuickBooks Online Advanced, which will give you up to 25 users. Now, in the QuickBooks Desktop world, QuickBooks Pro and Premier are the ones you normally find in a retail store like a Best Buy or an Office Depot, and you can buy either 1, 2, or 3 user versions for QuickBooks Pro. You can buy 1 to 5 user versions on QuickBooks Premier, and you can buy 1 to 5 versions on QuickBooks Accountant or Premier Accountant. Now, the next tier of QuickBooks desktop software is called QuickBooks Enterprise, and QuickBooks Enterprise will actually require you to pay a monthly or an annual subscription. We'll talk about pricing briefly. Now, for QuickBooks Enterprise, you can have either 1 to 10 users or a 30 user version. So if you need more than 5 users in the QuickBooks Desktop world, you have to use one of the enterprise versions, which goes all the way to 30. Now let's talk about pricing real quick, and it's important to disclaim that the prices you see on the screen are based on the date that we publish this video, which is in the middle of 2019. So obviously these prices are subject to change, and you can call us. I will put my phone number in the bottom of the video so you can call us at the office and we can help you choose the right version of QuickBooks that might work for you at any time in the future. Now, anyway, QuickBooks Online Self-Employed is about $120 per year. QuickBooks Online Simple Start, it's about $240 per year. QuickBooks Online Essentials is about $482 per year, and QuickBooks Online Plus will be about $840 per year. QuickBooks Online Advanced, which is the highest tier of QuickBooks Online, will cost about $1,800 per year. So those are kind of your options. Now, you don't pay yearly with QuickBooks Online necessarily. You can also pay monthly, but I think in order to make the comparison even, I have annualized all the cost. Now, in the QuickBooks Desktop world, QuickBooks Desktop Pro will cost about $100 per year on the one user, and about $266 for a 3 user per year. Now, in the QuickBooks Desktop world, specifically Pro, Premier, and Accountant, you actually buy the software outright, but QuickBooks supports it for about 3 years. So what I've done is I've taken the outright price and divided it by 3 to give you an estimated annualized cost. But the retail price of Pro, Premier, and Accountant is actually 3 times what you see on the screen, but it will last you at least 3 years. Anyway, QuickBooks Premier will cost you about $133 per year for a 1 user, $417 for a 3 user, and $650 for a 5 user. Moving on to QuickBooks Premier Accountant, or sometimes called QuickBooks Desktop Accountant, that's going to be about $200 per year for a 1 user, $500 per year for a 3 user, and $700 per year for a 5 user. Now, once you move to QuickBooks Enterprise, you're going to be paying monthly or annually no matter what. There's no one-time fee divided by 3 or anything like that. QuickBooks Enterprise is just going to be a flat monthly or annual cost. Now, QuickBooks Enterprise Silver, which is the entry level of the three options, and I'm only showing you Silver and Platinum. There's a Gold edition, but I'll skip it because it's really not worth talking about. The Silver edition is going to start at about $1,200 for one user per year, and it will move all the way to about $7,200 for a 30 user per year. So it's a pretty big range. The number of users obviously matters quite a bit. If you call our office and you give us the exact number of users, we can make the recommendation on the right version and give you the actual quote on that. Now, QuickBooks Enterprise Platinum, which is the highest version in the world of QuickBooks, which is better for companies doing advanced inventory type activities, that's going to be about $1,800 per year for a one user and about $8,000 per year for a 30 user. Now, across all platforms, dollar to dollar, I would say bang for the buck. The clear winner here is going to be QuickBooks Premier Accountant from the 1 to 5 user range, and QuickBooks Online Advanced on the 6+ to 25 user range. Now, as we get deeper and deeper into the features, you realize why I selected those in terms of bang for the buck. So moving on to banking. Now, banking is one of those areas where QuickBooks Online really, it's a lot better than QuickBooks Desktop. QuickBooks Online specifically, the one titled Simple Start Essentials Plus or Advanced, has powerful programmable bank rules. That means that you can get very creative on how you label the information that's coming from the bank in order to quickly, automatically categorize it or automatically assign it to a vendor. It also has really powerful matching tools. So if you already write a check in QuickBooks or receive a payment in QuickBooks, it's really, really easy to match it with your bank payments. Now, QuickBooks Self-Employed, which is the most basic version of QuickBooks, does have some bank feeds, but they're very basic, not rule-based. It does facilitate data entry, but not as powerful as QuickBooks Online. With QuickBooks Desktop, there is bank feeds and bank rules, but nearly not as powerful as QuickBooks Online. So across all the platforms, I think the winner in banking definitely is QuickBooks Online. Now, for access, it's really, really important to differentiate how the two platforms work. If you're working with QuickBooks Online or QuickBooks Self-Employed, it's all going to be based on web-based access. So you'll be able to access it from any computer using any platform, Mac, PC, whatever it happens to be. If you have a tablet, if you have a smartphone, you're going to be able to access it really, really easily. Now, for accountants, it's particularly better to work with QuickBooks Online because you don't have to transport files around, or you don't physically have to go on site or log into a computer remotely to have access to the QuickBooks Desktop file. So I think the clear winner in terms of access is going to be QuickBooks Online. Now, with QuickBooks Desktop, it is going to require that you set up a server if you're working with multi-user. There's a single user and multi-user toggle. Some things you have to be in single user to be able to do. So some really heavy administrative pieces, like making some changes in your system and your preferences, it might require everybody to log out for you to be able to do it, something you don't get in the QuickBooks Online world. And you can actually host any desktop version for about $50 per user per month. So you can have your desktop software on the cloud, but it's going to be an additional cost. Now, when it comes to working with accountants, again, you have to transfer a file over or move a file back and forth. So it's not as smooth as working with QuickBooks Online, but it is possible to collaborate with an accountant or another user remotely. You can also log into a computer physically in a local area network to access QuickBooks Desktop while you're outside the office. But again, it requires remote access software or an actual server that you can remote into. So that's really the contrast between the two. The clear winner in this case will be QuickBooks Online in terms of access. Now, user permissions is really, really important, especially with multi-user environments. Sometimes we want to limit who has access to what. Now, the QuickBooks Online platform between Simple Start and Plus it has very limited options in terms of limiting what the user can access. Specifically with self-employed and simple start, since it's only a single user, the one user is going to have admin access. But Essentials and Plus is a multi-user system with 3 to 5 users on those two versions respectively. You have very limited capacity to limit the other user from seeing certain things like bank accounts or payroll or customer balances. Now, QuickBooks Online Advanced did add some enhanced user access customization in the middle of 2019, and I suspect they'll get better through the end of 2019 and 2020, but it's still not as robust as QuickBooks Enterprise. QuickBooks Desktop, so Pro, Premier, and Accountant, can have multiple users, and there's a somewhat option to customize the user permissions, but not as robust as QuickBooks Enterprise. In terms of all the platforms and limiting the specific users in a comprehensive way on what they can access, I think QuickBooks Desktop Enterprise is the winner. So if you really want to have robust user permissions, you may want to consider QuickBooks Enterprise. Now, ease of use, that's really interesting one. And I added this as a category because I think it does matter. In my experience, when I add new customers into our firm and we implement QuickBooks for them, the customers that we implement QuickBooks Online for typically learn it a lot faster. We're talking about a learning curve of 3 months. There's hundreds, if not thousands of videos out there with tutorials on how to use QuickBooks from the makers of Intuit and some free PDF guides. There's just tons of resources to learn how to use QuickBooks Online. And they're adding new features each month. It has a lot less buttons and moving parts and features. That could be a plus or a minus. But in terms of ease of use, I think that QuickBooks Online is the clear winner. So if you're a newbie and you don't really want to spend a lot of time learning a system, although it's going to have a lot less features, I recommend QuickBooks Online. Now, in the QuickBooks Desktop world, you need to have some basic PC networking understanding if you're going to be working in a multi-user environment. There's a lot more moving parts, a lot more buttons, a lot more features, so you can get confused a lot easier if there's a lot of things in there that you're not going to use, but they're kind of sitting there distracting you. The learning curve is between 6 to 9 months where users feel comfortable with the system. There is videos and guides out there, but it's a bit confusing because it's year specific. There's QuickBooks Pro 2017 and QuickBooks Premier 2019, QuickBooks Enterprise 2015. I mean, there's so many different versions of years. So the access to the learning material or guides tends to be a bit more confusing and not as broad and obvious as the QuickBooks Online system. Now, with QuickBooks Desktop, I find that long-term QuickBooks users prefer to stay within the desktop platform, even if QuickBooks Online is, quote, easier. Once they're comfortable using desktop, if they're using desktop for years, I don't recommend them switch. So for the most part, I recommend for new users QuickBooks Online, for existing users to stay in the QuickBooks Desktop platform. Now, speed of use for experienced users is also an interesting metric. Now, when it comes to experienced users, most experienced users have already used QuickBooks Desktop in the past or are used to using desktop-based apps like Microsoft Excel or Word, and they're used to a lot of keyboard shortcuts. They're used to using maybe multi-monitors, doing a lot of filtering and sorting on reports, switching from transaction to transaction, from page to page, from report to report. That's all going to be much better in the desktop version. QuickBooks Online has a limitation that it requires an internet access and a browser. So sometimes, there's delays when you're switching between screens, and that doesn't make QuickBooks Online as optimal for speed of use of user experiences, of experienced users. But for multi-company switching, QuickBooks Online, that's much easier because you can literally log out of one and log into the other one, or switch between companies without having to go find a file somewhere in the computer, and it doesn't take as long to switch. So although I'm giving points to both platforms on ease of use to the experienced user, I think the chunk of the points it's on the QuickBooks desktop platform, just because it's easier to save and type and go into the next screen. But QuickBooks Online is getting there, especially with how easy it is to switch across multiple companies if you happen to be working with multiple companies. Now, there's a concept of a company file. In QuickBooks Online, you have to pay one subscription per company, one monthly fee per entity. So when we looked at the prices back then, all those prices are fair when we're looking at someone that's running QuickBooks to manage only one business. But then when you start talking about managing multiple businesses, you're going to pay per license on the QuickBooks Online world, or per company. In QuickBooks Desktop, you really pay is per user, and you can have unlimited number of companies or entities you manage. So if you're an accounting firm managing multiple clients and you're running everything through desktop, or you don't need it to be online, QuickBooks Desktop is going to be much better value. So it's really up to you. How many companies you run matters. So you may want to think about that before making the choice. So again, under number of companies you can manage, QuickBooks Desktop takes this one. Now, inventory management or using inventory. So if your business manages inventory, the QuickBooks Desktop platform overall is going to take it just because it's got more robust inventory functionality. Specifically, if you want to have unlimited items and you do manufacturing and you want to do assembly with changes on the fly, manage negative inventory issues, which happens a lot with accounting systems, barcodes, multiple location support, serial lot numbers, using a mobile warehouse app to manage picking and receiving, all that stuff. You may want to move straight to QuickBooks Desktop Enterprise. So when I have customers that do inventory, or their inventory manufacturing heavy type of company, we don't even look at anything else. We go straight to QuickBooks Enterprise. Now, if you still do light inventory, I think QuickBooks Premier and Accountant, it's a good option. It allows you to manage back orders with sales orders, which is a really powerful feature. And then most of my customers that do inventory, we don't even get them into QuickBooks Pro. And we just avoid using QuickBooks Online overall, because you can't do back orders and it's very basic inventory functionality. A very small company, maybe less than $100,000 in sales a year, you can probably do QuickBooks Online with inventory, no problem. But the minute inventory management becomes material, you want a more robust application. So when it comes to inventory, QuickBooks Desktop Enterprise takes it. And if you can't afford Enterprise, I would say at least take a look at Premier or Premier Accountant Edition. Now for reports, again, QuickBooks Enterprise will take the cake on this one. QuickBooks Enterprise will add advanced reporting tools. It can do consolidated financial statements. If you're working with multiple QuickBooks files, it will add something that's called a WIP report and a committed cost report, which is great for contractors. Overall, QuickBooks Desktop, it's just a better reporting application than QuickBooks Online. On the QuickBooks Online side, most of the stuff that you need, it's going to be okay. Financial statements, profit and loss, balance sheets, profit and loss by location, by department. In QuickBooks, they call that classes. That's all going to be part of the QuickBooks Online platform. But when it comes to having customized reports or reporting with custom fields, I think that QuickBooks Desktop is just a little bit better. There's also no limitation to the number of classes you can run. If you look at the pricing page or the feature page before, there's a limitation to how many classes and locations you can have with QuickBooks Online if you're not on the advanced version. So if you're running financial statements for multiple departments within your company, you may have to just consider QuickBooks Online Advanced. Or if you're going to do any sort of custom reports with items, job costing, I would look at the QuickBooks Desktop platform, especially if you're a contractor or, like I said, an inventory heavy company or a multi-entity business that needs to consolidate. You're going to have to go to QuickBooks Enterprise for that. Now, expandability is an interesting metric to look at. When it comes to QuickBooks Online, it's really easy to move up and down the different QuickBooks Online versions. It's really, really easy to connect with third-party apps. As a matter of fact, the library of third-party apps that QuickBooks Online can connect to, it's astonishing. If you go to apps.com, you can see everything that's in there. There are no list limits on the most advanced version of QuickBooks Online, the advanced version, which is about $150 a month, which is significantly less than most QuickBooks Enterprise versions. So when it comes to expandability, QuickBooks Online, it's good overall. Now, one of the issues that I have with QuickBooks Online and Desktop, that even though they have the same name, it's not so easy to move across platforms. So this is a pretty permanent decision. It's not like it's going to be easy to go from online to desktop or desktop to online, although it's a little bit easier to go from desktop to online than backwards. That is just something to consider. Now, really large company files in the QuickBooks Desktop world, I give you this warning up front. If you're a very large business doing maybe $50 million in sales and up, QuickBooks Online is something that a few years down the road, you're going to have to condense and cut the file because one database cannot have so much information. So I have some customers with very large QuickBooks Desktop company files just because they have a lot of activity that every couple of years we have to cut the file and they can only have basically last year and current year of data in it. So that's one little thing that's uncomfortable for me. I wish that they get much better at managing large files, especially for some of my larger clients. So when it comes to expandability, I would say that QuickBooks Online takes it on this one just because there's so much more apps out there that connect to QuickBooks Online to enhance the user experience. Now, one thing to think about is if you go with QuickBooks Online, because it has less features, but you want to add more apps, you want to think about cost. Because once you start adding apps to QuickBooks Online, the cost might be higher than QuickBooks Enterprise. And then at that point, you may want to think to stay within sort of a do-it-all platform like QuickBooks Desktop or QuickBooks Enterprise. So for now, expandability is going to go to QuickBooks Online, but there are some options in the QuickBooks Desktop side. Now, some miscellaneous piece I wanted to add, and that's just something that's, for a lot of people, it's not a big deal, but for me it is in the QuickBooks Desktop world, you can customize forms a lot. I mean, so you can make your invoice and your purchase orders look very specific, the location of your logo and the location of the fields and the number of built-in custom fields you can add into those forms is a lot more powerful in the desktop platform, period. QuickBooks Online is somewhat customizable, but if you really don't care too much about making your invoice very unique looking versus a desktop, then QuickBooks Online will work just fine. So when it comes to customizing forms, definitely QuickBooks Desktop takes it. Now, one of the really heavy-duty features here is managing job costing for contractors, construction-type companies, any company really managing projects where they want to know their payroll costs per project or per department. But not only the payroll costs, but also what's called the burdened payroll costs. So if you really want to manage robust payroll level job costing, you have to go to QuickBooks Desktop. And actually all QuickBooks Desktop, Pro Premier Accountant or QuickBooks Enterprise have the same payroll job costing features, but in QuickBooks Desktop Gold and Platinum, payroll is included. So you don't have to pay the additional $500-$600 a year that payroll costs when you go with the other platforms. Now, QuickBooks Online Self-employed doesn't have access to doing payroll. QuickBooks Online Simple Start and Essentials allows you to add payroll for about $60 a month. And QuickBooks Online Plus and Advanced is the same cost, but it allows you to do some basic payroll job costing. So you can allocate your payroll and your taxes to the jobs and get it in a specific report called the Project Profitability Report, but it doesn't allow you to do a burdening of additional costs into the projects. And that's something that, again, with robust payroll job costing, you may need to go with QuickBooks Desktop for something like that. Now, if you're working with QuickBooks Desktop Pro Premier Accountant or even Enterprise Silver Edition, you still have to add payroll as an additional cost. So if you're working with QuickBooks Desktop and you want to have payroll, you might want to consider looking at QuickBooks Enterprise Gold or Platinum because the payroll is included. That could save you $600, $700, $800 a year of payroll processing just by going with those higher versions of QuickBooks Desktop. So I think QuickBooks Desktop Enterprise Gold and Platinum take it on the payroll value side, and all of the desktop platform takes it for the payroll job costing reporting side. Now, if you're an accountant or you're the controller inside of a company, or you're working sort of at like in an accounting level when you're working with your QuickBooks, I think the accountant tools inside QuickBooks Desktop Accountant and QuickBooks Desktop Enterprise are the most powerful. You get to batch enter, copy and paste transactions from Excel into QuickBooks that are invoices, bills, checks, and deposits in batch. So you can actually literally have an Excel file with all these transactions and copy and paste them. It's really, really easy, really powerful tool. One of my favorite options inside QuickBooks Desktop Accountant and Enterprise. The batch reclassify tool is extremely valuable. It allows you to batch reclassify transactions that maybe they were classified to the wrong category or the wrong class or the wrong account. Allows you to do it really quick. There's a built-in batch deleter that allows you to delete invoices, bills, and checks in batch. So if you created them by mistake, you can delete them really quick. There's a fixed asset manager that allows you to calculate and depreciate your assets, basically manage your fixed assets. And it also allows you to open two QuickBooks files at the same time, so you can compare maybe the balance sheet from one and the balance sheet from the other, because you're looking at intercompany transactions or something like that. So if you're working with multiple companies, you can open up to two at the same time. So in QuickBooks Online, there actually is no limit. So that's the only bad thing about QuickBooks Desktop. If you're running 3, 4, 5 companies, you have to log out of one and log into the other if you want to access it. QuickBooks Online is a bit more flexible when it comes to that. But overall, I think QuickBooks Accountant or QuickBooks Desktop Accountant and Enterprise pretty much takes it on this one. In conclusion, I recommend QuickBooks Desktop Accountant to most people. I think it's the best bang for the buck. It's about $600 for a one user license that will last you about 3 years. It's got the most powerful tools for the amount of money you're spending, and it could do quite a bit. Now, if you're a small business and you don't want to be tied to a computer when working with QuickBooks, and you want to be able to use a tablet or a phone, and you really don't care about additional features beyond invoicing and banking, QuickBooks Online Essentials or Plus will be great. I'll add some links below in the description. I specifically want you to click on the link where I compare all the versions of QuickBooks in this really large spreadsheet. It has about 200 rows, and I compare all the features across all versions from QuickBooks Online Simple Start all the way to QuickBooks Desktop Enterprise, also Pro, Premier, and Accountant Edition. So you can go through these feature by feature, you can search, and you can see which versions have which features that would help you figure out what's best for your business. If you're a small business that wants a bit more features, doesn't need to be online, and is looking for a sort of a lower overall annual cost, QuickBooks Pro and Premier tend to be a great choice. And if you're a business that's actually in the construction, or you do any sort of project management, manufacturing, wholesale, or inventory, I'm going to recommend QuickBooks Desktop Platinum, Enterprise Platinum. That's just going to be the best option for that period. For most users, most people watching this video, I think QuickBooks Desktop Accountant might be the best option. So if you need to purchase it, we are resellers. We'll help you select the right one or sell it to you, and we're guaranteed to be competitive with pricing. So if you have any questions, there's my email. There's our office phone number. We're open 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. You can speak to me or someone else, and we'll guide you to the right version of QuickBooks. Thank you.